What's happening, team? It's Liam from Lazarus Personal Training, back again with After Dark, where we watch AEW Dark. I pick an element to talk about and we work out how we could make ourselves better wrestlers by watching the guys and girls on AEW Dark. Slight improvement from last week. I have my tripod today. I don't have to use this gimmick for the camera. Here we are. I'm also sat on the table that I was using last time, so you know, bits of improvement. We're getting there at the unit. Today I am talking about story. How do we create story in wrestling, and how do we make sure that our matches tell a story? This links in heavily with what I talked about last week, which was character, because if you have a character, it's far easier to tell a story, but that's not to say that it's impossible to tell one without. So I'm going to look at some good examples, some not so good examples, and some elements where I thought we really needed some work. To look first at the good examples, I thought the Team Taz match did an excellent job in putting over the dissent and the breakup and the unrest between Ricky Starks and Brian Cage. The fact that Ricky comes out a little bit after the rest of the team do. The fact that the tags are just off and they're tagging in on each other. And the fact at the end where Ricky Starks tags in Brian Cage. He's done his finisher, he's done the Rochambeau, and then he goes, "Here, Brian, you take the pin." I just think those elements told an excellent story throughout the match, kept that entertaining, kept that storyline moving without necessarily having to go, and now they've broken up. It's just an extra piece into the puzzle. So a cracking job from the lads on Team Taz for telling that story so well. And also a shout out to Fuego del Sol. Whatever match that he's in, his story, his personal story, he's always trying to hit that tornado DDT. And I think that's such a good thing for him to have, because it doesn't matter what element he's in, he's always looking to hit that DDT. And I'm invested in him hitting the DDT. So there, it doesn't matter who he's against, his personal story, his personal drive is always that DDT. And finally on this, obviously Max Caster is on the show. I'm going to talk about him because this is a Max Caster stan account. When it comes to his promos, he's always telling a story through those promos. He's won this week on AEW Dark. They're setting up for this match against Hangman Page. So he talks about what he's done previously. He talks about how Hangman isn't with the Elite anymore, how he's not really in the Dark Order. And again, we're just telling that story, or Max Caster is telling that story of how Adam Page hasn't found his place within AEW. Max Caster is going to take advantage of that. Good lord, that took too long to think about. So not only is Max Caster funny and he delivers his lines well, every single promo that he has tells some sort of story to move us forward. Max Caster, what a guy. Not necessarily everything has to be a plot point in a long-running story, especially for something like AEW Dark, where it is just matches now and again. So say, for example, the first match, which is the Dark Order trio match, all it's really doing there is just building some more stock in the Dark Order, putting them over as a team, and the enhancement talent are just there to take the moves basically. But that's fine, that's a story in that the Dark Order are a cohesive team, unlike Team Taz, who are no longer a cohesive team. So that story did its point, or that match told the story of that match particularly well. That was a horrendous sentence, I'm sorry. Another way that they've done that is with all the Hardy matches that happened throughout this Dark, more specifically the Butcher one. Butcher comes in, he mauls John Cruz, and that's it. And they're putting over the Butcher as a legitimate threat in that he just annihilated this dude. I really like the Butcher, I really like the Blade. I listened to an excerpt of him talking to Miro recently where he was talking about where that character develops from and how they are 90s sidekick baddies that are there, like mercenaries, and I thought, clever. very clever. I really like the Butcher. I highly rate him. And then Bear Country and also Jurassic Express, but I'll highlight Bear Country. They went up against TH2, an established tag team. That match was setting up for Dynamite, and the story of that match is going into Dynamite. They looked good, there was a competitive element to that match, but you knew Bear Country were going to win from the start, and they had a strong showing. It wasn't a complete squash like the Butcher match was, but they looked strong throughout it. And I think as a story of them going into Dynamite for this, probably the biggest match that they've had on AEW so far, that was really important to tell that story, and I think they did a good job of that. Okay, let's talk about some less than good examples when we're telling a story. For the women's tag match, I highly rate Ashley Vox, and it seems like the people at AEW do too, and she's in this tag team with a legitimate sister called Sea Stars. As I said last week, I think Ashley does a very good job of putting over her character. They were against Vixen and Jasmine Allure in this match. Now, the Sea Stars, Ashley and Demi, are sisters. They have matching gear, and they come out and do the pose thing and all that sort of stuff. So why is it that they had one tag move and the non-established team, Vixen and Jasmine Allure, who seem to be randomly put together, were able to do more cohesive tag stuff than the actual tag team themselves? If we're looking at this as a story and as plot points and devices, they were telling a different story to them what actually was presented in front of them. What they are is a tag team, so their story should be they are a tag team that can do tag team moves, and then unfortunately there's something that stops them along the way. Instead, it felt like two singles wrestlers that had just been randomly put into a tag team had been taken advantage of. So for them, when they are constructing a story, if you are in a tag team and you are constructing a story, think about, as a tag team, are you developing that correctly, or else it takes you out of it, because I don't believe they're a tag team. They did one thing together, which wasn't even particularly a tag team move, before getting cut off and then getting a heat put on them. So when it comes to tag team storytelling, yes, we have a standard tag story that we tell, but we can tell that in different ways. The other example of poor storytelling was JD Drake against Baron Black. JD Drake is going up against Darby Allin for the TNT Championship on Dynamite this week. So my problem with this story that they told in this match was that it was a really back and forth encounter. It's a really strong showing for Baron Black, and he got a couple of near falls, and JD just about manages to get through this match. Why would I then believe that he has any sort of chance or opportunity against Darby Allin? He doesn't, because he can barely beat Baron Black, who, as they talk about on Sammy's vlog, is an extra and he's booked as extra work. So the continuing story, and again, I'm not saying that had to be a squash match, but certain things like, should Baron Black have got in quite a close near fall? No, because he didn't need that, and the story didn't need to tell that. The story overall is that JD is going on to face Darby Allin for the TNT Championship, so should have been made to look like a legitimate threat, but instead it wasn't the case, and they had quite a back and forth contest. You could argue that Baron Black could go up against Darby Allin in the match if they wanted to. This is going to die, and I'm going to stop this right now. The whole Ryan Nemeth, JD Drake, Cesar Bononi story that ran through this episode of Dark, if I'm being completely honest, I felt like was bad storytelling. We start out with a promo where Cesar Bononi is talking about his unsureness about JD Drake joining this group of pretty people, and Ryan Nemeth pretty much goes, yeah, like he's not good looking and this and that. JD Drake comes in and goes, what are you saying about me? And he goes, oh no, it's fine, don't worry about it. If we're establishing this group of people, then really I felt like Ryan should have been saying to Cesar, no, it's fine. I know he's not conventional looking, but he's a tough guy. He's a British house. Like, we want him on our team, and really putting him over strong to maybe have a moment where Cesar and JD are a bit unsure on themselves, which later down the line they help each other, realise that they're all right with each other, and away we go. Or if Ryan says, I know he needs a little bit polish, but trust me, he's the right guy for us. JD comes in and says, oh, I'm a Southern guy, I've got an accent and this and that, and Ryan's like, I know, that's absolutely fine, and we love you the way that you are. Just felt like that promo didn't work. Then in Ryan Nemeth's match, felt like that was just a match that was happening. They had JD on the outside and really didn't get involved. I felt like that could have had more interaction from them. And then in JD's match, while it didn't particularly need any input from Ryan, just simple stuff like when Baron was on the outside, JD could have gone over to the ropes and Ryan Nemeth could have been like, oh, is your face okay? And then JD's like, yeah, my face is fine. So then they play into that angle of Ryan Nemeth, Cesar Bononi, Peter Avalon are all the pretty dudes. JD Drake isn't a pretty dude, and they want to make him that way, and there's a bit of like, that's the story that they're trying to tell, and I just felt like they almost tried to plant the seeds in the promo, didn't, and then they had 2 matches where they could have done stuff to elevate that story and give that faction a little bit more prominence, and they just didn't. Final bits from me on this edition of Dark. This is the best that I've seen Kylan King. I've said it a couple of times, I feel like she doesn't wrestle to her size. This week she did. She was hitting some strong kicks, some strong forearms, and the release German suplex. I was like, yes, that's the most impressive thing that you have done, because we're playing up to her size. So credit to her, I really appreciated that. Also, I think the dynamic of those 3 is really interesting. Whether they're doing it intentionally or not, I think this sets up to plant seeds for a good 6 months down the line, where Kylan King turns on Red Velvet, turns on Big Swole, and she plays into the fact of whenever the camera was looking, it was always going towards Red Velvet. I feel like maybe not even 6 months, maybe closer to that point, but there is a definite story that they can create there that gives Kylan King something to work with, and that's the thing that she's really been missing, is that she's just sort of been floating. I think this trio can have a bit of a run, and then she goes, you know what, Red Velvet, you've been taking all the spotlight, the camera's always on you, you have to get the pin, I'm not having it anymore. So credit to Kylan King on that. I'm glad that she's finding her place. And also, on the topic of that trios match, do you want to know when someone is over? When everybody else is doing their taunt. Red Velvet does the whip thing, and I guarantee in every single match that she has on Dark, the opponent does the whip thing. It's super over. And on that point, just as a complete aside, I sometimes feel that when people do that, they're trying to take the mick, but actually all it does is reinforces the point that Red Velvet has a gimmick and you don't have a gimmick. Because usually when the person does that, they're just someone that's there. Something to think about. And finally, I know who Mike Magnum is now. Like, if this match would have been on last week's episode, I'd have been like, oh, cool, this is his character. Okay, so he's a starving artist. He wants people to watch him, and I get the starving artist trying to make ends meet. That makes sense as a thing. He's got the paintbrush, and he's like, I'm going to paint the canvas because I'm an artist. Okay, I can see that linking in together now. And then he goes to hit Mike Sydal with a paintbrush because he's a starving artist, because he'll take whatever road he needs to take to get the win. Obviously, comes up very, very short, but I get the character. That's all I'm looking for, is some establishment as to who he is, the starving artist, and just having that was just enough to make me go, these plot points that you are putting down are all sort of linking together now. So again, credit to Mike Magnum. You absolutely got buried last week, not so much this week. I do think that the name sounds like an adult film star's name. Maybe that's intentional. Maybe that's intentional because that's how he's making his ends meet. Oh, see what? Creating plot points. And that is everything for this edition of After Dark. What do you think to what I've talked about here? Do you agree with what I'm saying on stories, or am I completely off the mark? Am I looking too deep into this, and really I should just enjoy the wrestling for the wrestling. Let me know in the comments down below. If you've liked this video, give it a like, give it a share, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, all that good stuff. I do massively appreciate it when people do interact with my videos. It's just nice to know that people are watching it. Is there anything that you would like to see me talk about? An element of wrestling, some particular aspect of it? Again, drop me a message and let me know. I've been Liam from Lazarus Personal Training, and I will see you next time.